Welcome to Tiny Code Christmas. 12 days of size coding and demo scene effects for fantasy consoles. There is no leaderboard, no requirement to show your work, just enjoy the festivities. Join the Lovebyte Discord, follow us on Mastodon and X, there are links in the description to all of those. If you're stuck, ask for help in the Tiny Code Christmas channel on the Lovebyte Discord server and we'll be more than happy to help you out. This video is a companion to the tcc.lovebyte.party website, so please check it out for the full picture. Every day there will be a challenge and a size code restriction on that challenge if you want to take it even further. Download TIC80 or Pico8, details are on our website, and let's get started. We'll be starting with TIC80, so if you're here for Pico8 you can skip to that section of the video in the table of contents. Before we begin we need to make one small configuration change to the TIC80. We're going to type menu to access the options menu, so scroll down and you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to navigate to options. And we're going to go up to dev mode and we're just going to make sure that that is turned on. And once that's turned on, we can hit back and we can hit close game. This dev mode setting will persist, so we only need to do it once. Dev mode allows us to easily change between running our program and editing our code. Let's create a new file. And in TIC80 we type new, Lua, and that creates a new cart for us. Before we go any further, it's going to be a good idea to save our cart, so I'm going to type save tcc day 1 and hit enter. And you'll see now that cart tcc day1.tic has been saved, and this has the added bonus of allowing the Control S or Command S shortcut to save your work at any point. So now let's take a look at the default cart. Let's hit escape to enter the code editor. The default cartridge comes with a small bit of code along with some comments up the top. I'm going to run this code just so we can take a look at it, and I'm going to do it by using the play button up here on the menu, and you can see that also highlights that there's a shortcut Control-R to run this. So let's run. So you can see the default cart comes with a little bit of code, and we have the TIC80 mascot that we can move with the arrow keys. And again, I'm just going to hit escape to bring myself back to the editor. And if I want to run the code again, I can either use the play button or I can hit Control-R. Now, we don't need any of this code because we're going to be writing our own code, so I'm going to remove everything inside of function tick between this line and end, and I'm going to remove everything above it, including the comments at the top. This function is the heart of TIC80, and this function runs 60 times a second. This means that anything we put inside this function, writing out text, our pixel effects, drawing shapes, will be done 60 times a second, including any of the calculations that we need to do to make them move. The main aim in size coding is to keep the size down, so when we're working in TIC80 we will be keeping an eye on the size down here in the corner, and you can see at the moment there is 21 characters, combinations of letters and spaces and punctuation that we are using so far. Initially the challenges are going to focus on this size here, but as time goes on we're going to change as we learn new things, and we're going to use the file size of the TIC80 cart as the metric for our size coding. If you're taking part in a byte battle, it'll be the character size. If you're entering a size coding competition, it'll be the file size. I'm going to go ahead and run this program. And as you can see, it does pretty much nothing. The menu bar has changed to indicate that the program is running, but the program hasn't actually done anything, so there's nothing to see. The first thing that we're going to take a look at is the CLS function. And CLS stands for clear screen. So now that I've typed in CLS and the brackets to call this CLS function, when I hit play, we'll see that my screen has now been colored in. By default, CLS fills the screen with color 0. So what's color 0? If we navigate up here to the sprite editor, which we're not going to be using much if at all in Tiny Code Christmas, but it is useful to take a look at the color palette, the Sweetie 16 color palette. So you can see if I hover over the first one, up in the menu bar it says color 00, color 01, 02, 03, 04 as I navigate through them. So I'm going to take color 2, and I can modify my CLS function call by adding 2 as a parameter, and now when I run it, the screen will be cleared and filled with that colour of red. So today's challenge is to create a Christmas scene in TIC80 using shape functions, which we're going to take a look at now. There's the added challenge of then keeping that below 256 characters. Before we do anything, I'm going to put CLS back to the default colour, and we are now going to take a look at circle. When we're working with TIC80, it has a built-in help function that we can access from the console. We can hit escape and it will bring us back to the console, and we can type help circ. And you can see here we have some very useful information about the circle function. The circle function takes an X and a Y coordinate, a radius and a colour. So this function draws a filled circle of the desired radius and colour with its centre at X and Y. And you get some extra technical information about the algorithm it uses to draw the circle as well. So let's give this circle an X coordinate of 0 and a Y coordinate of 0. And we'll do that so that we can figure out exactly what 0, 0 is in TIC80. Where is the origin? So the next parameter is the radius. I'm going to give it 10 pixels, and then there's the color, and I'm going to make that color 2, which is that red color that we've seen already. So I'm going to run this, and we'll see that we have our circle up here in the top left hand corner. So that tells us that the origin for TIC80 is in the top left hand corner. So I'm going to move this in a bit, and I'm going to change the X coordinate to 100 and the Y coordinate to 100. And now we can see the full circle has been painted. The resolution of TIC80 is 240 pixels wide and 136 pixels tall. So if I want to add another circle, I just do the same. And I'll give this different coordinates. I'll give it the same radius and colour. And now we can see that we have two circles overlapping. And I can maybe change this so that the circles are next to each other. Like this. And I'll add another one. And you can copy and paste in TIC80 as well. You can see this one now, because I've given this a Y coordinate of the center of the circle being 140. That means the center of the circle will be at Y140. That is down off of the screen. So I'm going to move all these back up by 20. And we can see now we have 3 circles. So the next function that we're going to take a look at is rectangle. And again, we're going to go to help and type rect to get information about it. So rect requires an X and Y coordinate, a width and a height, and a color. So I'm going to type 10 and 10 for the coordinates. And for the width, I'm going to specify 100. For the height, I'm going to specify 5. And for the color, I'm going to specify 1, which is that purple color. So now we can see that we have drawn a rectangle up here with a width of 100 and a height of 5 and with the color purple. So a few other functions that are going to be useful to you when you're working with TIC80 is going to be the border functions. So if I add a B to any of these, you'll see now that they draw the bordered version, so they're not filled. And some other functions that might be of use to you are pix. Pix allows you to draw an individual pixel. So it allows you to change the color of one pixel. You also have line, which will draw a line from one XY coordinate to another XY coordinate. And then the last one we have is try, for triangle. At any point, we can type help on any of these functions and get some useful information. So try in this case is x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3, color. So we need to provide 3 coordinates and the color, and this draws a filled triangle. And of course, there's also the try B function for using a border with the triangle. Now, I'm not going to show you how to use any of these functions, and I'll leave that to you as part of the challenge. But what I am going to do is take a look at how we can reduce the amount of code that we've written while keeping the same output. So there's quite a lot of repetition here in our 3 circles, and you'll notice that the x coordinate stays the same, the radius stays the same and the color stays the same, and the only thing that really changes is the y coordinate. So we're going to make an attempt to reduce this, and one of the reasons why is if we introduce a few more circles into our program. So if you take a look down here, we're already over the 256 character limit, and that's just for 12 circles. So if we want to do a full Christmas scene, we're going to have to get creative. So let's take it back to our 3 original circles. And as I said before, the y coordinate is the only thing that's changing. So what I'm going to do is introduce a for loop. And a for loop allows us to use a variable to count from one number to another number in steps of another number. And it's important to put the end for our for loop. So what this will do is it will take this variable I, it'll allow us to store a value in I, it will start at 80, it will then add 20 to it, making it 100, it will add 20 to it again, making it 120, and then it will stop. So this sets it up to start at 80, finish at 120, and go up in steps of 20, which is exactly what we have here. So I can now remove 2 of these circles because we only need one function call, and I'm going to replace this with I. And if I run the code, you'll see that the output is exactly the same. I'm after reducing the number of characters that I'd used over 3 of them. I have introduced some more characters by using the for loop, but that would pay off in different ways. For example, if I change this to 60, now I have 4 circles. If I change this to 40, I now have 5 circles. And if I change this to 20, I now have 6 circles, all for the same amount of code. So this is going to be one of the primary techniques that you're going to be using to create your Christmas scene. So before you go any further, it's always a good idea to save by hitting Ctrl S or changing back to the terminal and typing save. So that's it for now. Best of luck with the challenge, and don't forget to check the website. Welcome to the Pico 8 section. I'm using the downloadable version of Pico 8, but for most of these challenges, the free educational version is going to work just as well, and you can find the link for that on the TCC website. So I'm going to press escape to switch into our code editor, and you can see here this is where we're going to type our code, and I'm going to press escape to switch back to the command line. I am going to save this before we go any further as TCC day 1, and you can see that that has been saved as tcc day1.p8, and that means that at any point now I can hit Command S or Control S to save my progress. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to type the draw function, and the draw function _draw is a function that's called 30 times a second inside in Pico 8, which means that we are drawing at 30 frames per second. There is a way to get 60 frames per second, and we'll talk about that later on in TCC. First function that we're going to introduce is CLS, and CLS is a function that is going to clear the screen. And to run my program in Pico 8, I can hit Command R or Control R, and my program will run, and you can see now that we're after clearing the screen. When I hit escape, it'll bring me back to the terminal, and if I hit it again, it'll bring me back to my code. So I'm going to come up here to the sprite editor. This is something that we're not going to be using in Tiny Code Christmas, but it is useful to take a look at the various colors that are available to us. There's 16 colors, and they're all numbered, so you can see down here in the bottom left, as I click or hover over the numbers, it tells me the number associated with them. So CLS by default is after clearing to color 0. I'm going to swap back to the code editor, and I'm going to type 8. And now when I run, the screen is filled with the red color. And again, I'm going to hit escape twice to bring me back to the code editor. And I also have the option of running my code from the command line by typing run. Today's challenge is a Christmas scene with the added challenge of getting that done in 256 characters. And we're going to do that with shapes. When typing in Pico 8, even though the font is uppercase, you'll be typing in lowercase, meaning that you'll have caps lock off. If you have caps lock on or shift, you will get these little glyphs instead, which you can use as well, but we'll come back to them later. So circ is the circle function, and to find out more, we're going to change to the command line and type help circ. So we can see that the circle function takes an x coordinate, a y coordinate, a radius, and a color. And you can see that it also lets us know that there's a circ fill as well. So x, y, I'm going to give it an origin of 0 and 0 so that we can see where 0, 0 is on the Pico 8. And we need to give it a radius. I'm going to give it a radius of 10, and we're going to give it a color. Now I'm going to change the background color here to 1, and then I'm going to change this to 8. So let's run this and see what it looks like. So we can see that up here we have a circle. In this case, the circle is not filled, so it is a border circle. And we can see that the center is 0, 0 up in the top left-hand corner. So the origin for Pico 8 is 0, 0. I'm going to move it in a bit. And now we'll see that we have our circle at coordinate x 100 and y 100. And the Pico 8 screen resolution is 128 pixels by 128. So I'm going to change this now to circ fill and run it, and you'll see that now we have a filled circle. And if I want some other circles, I can put these in as well. And now I have 2 circles. And I can change the coordinates on them. Another function that we might want is a rectangle. So I'm going to type help rect to get some more information about this. And the rectangle takes an x and y coordinate for the top left and an x and y coordinate for the bottom right, along with the color. So let's put in a rectangle here, and I'll make it from 10, 10 to 20, 20, and I'll give that a color of 9. So we can see here that we have, if we move in 10 pixels from the left, 10 pixels from the top, that's the top left hand corner of our rectangle. And if we move to 20, 20, we see that's the bottom right hand corner of our rectangle. And as with the previous, there's also a filled version, as you can see here. Some of the other functions that would be useful to you might be line and oval. And you can check the documentation for these by typing help and the function name. Unfortunately, the Pico 8 doesn't have a triangle function, so that'll make today's challenge a bit difficult if you decide to do a Christmas tree. So I'd recommend a snowman instead, maybe. I'm just going to rearrange these a bit, and I'm going to make it 60, then 80, and I'm going to add another circle here. So we now have 3 circles, and when I run it, you'll see those 3 circles. When we're size coding in Pico 8, one of the things we need to keep a track of is the character count. So down here in the bottom right, you can see this is the token count, but if we click it once, it'll bring it to the character count, and you can see we're at 99 characters. And the challenges are 256 characters or even lower. So you can also copy and paste in Pico 8, and I'm just going to paste in a few more circles, and you can see that I'm after adding 12 circles and we're already at 300 characters. So we're after increasing the amount of code significantly for 12 circles. This isn't going to lend itself well to our challenge, which is to create a Christmas scene. We're going to need to introduce some techniques that allow us to reduce the amount of code that we're using while hopefully maintaining the same output. For this, I'm going to introduce a for loop. And a for loop allows us to count from a number to another number in steps that we can specify. So what this means is that we have a for loop that has a variable I, and that variable I is going to be set to the value of 60. Then it is going to run this code. It is going to add 20 to it, making it 80, and then it's going to run this code. And if I change this to 100, it would start at 60, 80, and then 100 inclusively. So the value will be I equal to 60. It will run the code, then it will update it to 80. It'll run the code, and it'll update it to 100, and then it'll run the code. Now, obviously, we have a lot of repetition here. You can see the 60, 80, and 100. The X coordinate stays the same, but the Y changes. And we're going to use the for loop to do that for us, instead of us typing out 3 individual circles. So now I'm going to replace 60 with I, and this code will be run with I equal to 60 at 20. It'll be run with I equal to 80 at 20. It'll be run with I equal to 100. And you can see that we're down to 80 characters. So this will save us a lot of space, and it gives us the same output. And one of the best things about it is that I can change this to 40, and now I have 4 circles. I can change it to 20, and now I have 5 circles. And the amount of code that I'm using in terms of characters hasn't changed at all. So this is one of the main techniques that you're going to be using to tackle your challenge. That's all for this video. Best of luck at the challenge, and don't forget to check out the website for more details.